let's get it.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever it is you're tuning in from. Welcome to this month's OneDrive Office Hours. I'm Rob Nunez, Product Market Manager here for SharePoint and OneDrive, and thank you everybody for tuning in. I see a lot of people posting in the chat from different locations, so thank you for taking the time to join us for today's session. And as always, this meeting is going to be recorded, so of course, let's continue to keep driving our great interactions and engagement that we usually have on these sessions. But continue to ensure that it is a respectful and fun environment for everybody. But today we have a really great session for you all. But first, I'd like to share a few updates with everyone here. So starting with our latest blog post that we currently have on our tech community site. So first, if PDFs are part of your everyday work, we published a new blog diving into some of the features that help you manage and edit PDFs directly within your OneDrive experience. So please take the time to check out our feature deep dive that covers everything you need to know on how to leverage these tools. We also have our latest episode on the Sync Up podcast. So our hosts, Stephen and Arvin, sit down with David Johnson, who's an IT architect here at Microsoft, to talk about how we, and by we, I mean Microsoft internally, uses OneDrive. And, he shares a few tips and secrets to how we manage OneDrive here at Microsoft. So definitely a really great podcast for you guys to take some time to listen to. And then lastly, for our Microsoft 365 personal and family subscribers, Copilot for OneDrive Web is now available for users. So our latest blog also dives into some of the details on how you can experience Copilot in your M365 personal and family subscriptions as well. So please visit our tech community to read all of these blogs and more. And if you want, you can also use the link below to go directly to our latest blog post. So every time a new blog post is published, that link will bring you directly to what the latest talk will be. So another reminder, M365 conference is only a few weeks away, and we have a ton of great content and sessions planned for everybody. And of course, our leaders, Jeff Teeper, Jason Moore, Adam Harmons will all be there alongside our product teams, and they're all super eager to engage and interact with everybody. But if you would look for a little bit more details, we actually have our detailed event guides for the conference as well. So we have one both for OneDrive and SharePoint, and this covers basically everything you need to know across our sessions, our speakers, and our community meetups. So these are a great resource to get caught up to speed and get excited for what we have in store at this year's event. So either use one of the links below to access either the OneDrive or SharePoint link, and take some time to explore, what your journey could look like at the conference itself. And to follow alongside that, alongside our sessions, we will also have a live customer panel at the conference. So Jason Moore will be joined by a few leaders across a span of different industries, from media and entertainment and healthcare and a few others. And he'll be taking some time with our panelists to discuss on, what their current business challenges are and how OneDrive and M365 is really helping them solve those problems. So a really great session that we have there. And again, this is a live customer panel, so you'll be able to interact with all of our panelists as well as Jason at the conference. So if you're there, you do not want to miss this session. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And if there is any more questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to guide you guys to how you can attend all of the sessions that we have in store. So with that, let's quickly get into today's agenda. So, of course, we have Stephen Rice, who will be covering our OneDrive roadmap updates. We're also joined by Kayla today, who will be going into today's topic for KFM sync deployment. And of course, we will close with our usual Q&A segment and leave some time for open discussion. So with that, I will pass it over to Stephen, and he'll go over some updates. So Stephen, over to you.
Yeah, so the team's got a bunch of great improvements we've made to the product over the last couple of months. We've got a couple of new things that are coming down the line. I'll pause for a moment so you can read the slides, but I've got a few things I'll call out. First, coming in the kind of the next 3 months category, I want to call out the new capability we're adding to the OneDrive sync experience on Mac to allow you to sync to external drives. This is a much asked for feature from customers who are using Macs that want to be able to, take their OneDrive, make sure it syncs to non-home directories, non-removable directories, basically not your internal hard drive. So we're really excited about this change coming kind of in the next 3 months. As we look a little bit farther out, there's the catch up with Copilot feature. This is one we were using internally right now to great success. It's a great way to kind of catch up on your meetings, your OneDrive files, all the content that is happening around you, and getting started with your day with Copilot. Another cool feature we're really excited about is the discoverable by company toggle for video files. This is the ability that was kind of in Stream Classic to make your video files more easily discoverable by your entire company with just kind of a single switch. We're really excited about that one. And the final one, topic that has come up very often in office hours and really looking forward to getting out there, is the transfer ownership feature. So making it a little bit easier to move files from a OneDrive to another OneDrive when someone leaves the company. So those are kind of the updates for this month. We've got a lot more coming after the M365 Community Conference next month. And yeah, like Rob said, hope to see you all there. But with the roadmap done, I will turn it over to Kayla to talk through our main topic for today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm Kayla. I am a product manager working on the OneDrive Sync client. And today I'm going to be talking about the best practices for deploying OneDrive Sync and known folder move. So first, I'm going to cover some basics about deploying OneDrive Sync. Then I'll talk about the sync ideal state and some updates there. And then lastly, we're going to cover a few troubleshooting tips for the most common issues that we tend to see when people are deploying. All right, so deploying OneDrive Sync. So we know many organizations are not homogeneous in terms of environment setup. So you probably have lots of people in your organization, and they probably have a lot of different wants and needs. To that end, we support Windows, Mac, and virtualized environments. So for Windows, we support Windows 10 and 11. Do note, though, that Windows 10 end of support is coming up in October, so do make sure you have considered and planned for that. For Mac OS, we support the latest 3 versions, so that would be Ventura, Sonoma, and Sequoia. And then for virtualized environments, we support Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, and non-persistent setups that use FS Logic to store the profile. We also do support remote apps in AVD and Citrix. OneDrive does get installed automatically with Windows or Office, and you can also install it using other tools like Intune. Currently, the Windows installation is set up per user, but we are transitioning to per machine installs, so there will be only one version, regardless of the number of profiles on the machine. And if you do need to move to per machine install before this transition, we do have an easy command that you can run for the conversion. On Mac, we support both a standalone version and an App Store version. So for your organization, we do recommend the standalone version because it has additional capabilities like known folder move, KFM, which I'll be talking about more today as well. And then lastly, once OneDrive has been installed, you're going to want to deploy various OneDrive settings and policies, many of which are part of the ideal state that I will be talking about next. You can deploy these using different tools, and depending on your configuration, you might actually need to use multiple tools. So when we rolled out known folder move within Microsoft, we actually used both the Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager and Intune. All right, so now I want to chat about the sync ideal state. So the sync ideal state, when we talk about this, what we're referring to is the recommended configuration for OneDrive Sync. And you can find more about it in our docs at aka.ms/sync ideal state. So that's at the bottom of the screen there. Looks like having a little Mac Windows issue in terms of showing those icons. But anyways, the sync ideal state includes a set of 10 and actually soon to be 9 recommendations that are designed to ensure that the OneDrive Sync client provides the best experience for both admins and users. I like to think of this as 3 different groups. So think about it in terms of the sync client setup, performance and storage, and then backup and deployment. So let's start with the sync client setup first. So the sync client will auto update, making it really easy to ensure that you have the latest fixes, features, and this doesn't require any packaging or deployment on your side, so it's really seamless. We do have 3 rings. We have the insiders ring, which deploys about every week. We have the production ring, which deploys every 2 weeks, and then the deferred ring, which is every 2 months. We do have a few actions for you. So you want to make sure that you have allowed access to OneDrive client, or sorry, oneclient.sfx.ms and g.live.com. And then we also do encourage you to select early adopters to put into your insiders ring so you understand and see what features and fixes might be coming before they reach your entire organization. Application startup is actually a newer policy that we've introduced, so some people might not be aware of this one. This policy ensures that OneDrive Sync is always running every time users sign into Windows. So you might have users who have disabled OneDrive from starting automatically, or either accidentally or intentionally. And so they might not understand how to re-enable or start it manually. So if you set this policy, it will ensure that the OneDrive client is always starting. Next, we have the silent account configuration. So this is one of the easiest, simplest ways to make sure that your users are signed in with their Windows account. So if you don't enable this, it's actually up to the user to go sign in, and nothing will sync until there's an account associated with the OneDrive Sync client. So as long as the device is joined to an Entra ID, this should be in effect. If you want to validate, make sure you follow our docs, which we have. I screenshot them on the right. There's the link at the bottom. Just to make sure it's working correctly, because there are some registry keys that you'll want to check because account config can only happen once per device. And we'll actually talk a little bit about this later for some of the troubleshooting tips. On Mac, you don't need to worry about this because it's enabled by default. We are looking at enabling it by default on Windows as well. So to recap on the Sync client setup for your updates and rings, you're going to make sure you allow this network traffic, and we do encourage you to use both the insiders and production rings. Account startup, do enable this reg key on Windows. And then lastly, for account configuration, ensure your devices are joined to Entra ID and that you enable the silent account config policy on Windows. All right, so moving forward, we have the next group, which I like to call performance and storage. First up is the Windows Notification Service, which despite its name, WNS as we call it, is actually needed for all platforms, both Windows and Mac, to get file changes from your device as soon as possible, or getting the changes from cloud to device as soon as possible. So if you don't enable this URL, the .ws.windows.com, to pass proxies when syncing, a lot of the syncing will just take longer because we will instead poll every 2 minutes to look for changes, which will lead to poorer performance and more network usage. So highly encourage you to make sure that the traffic is allowed. Next, we have files on demand and storage sense. So these are actually two separate things that really work well when paired together. Files on demand is enabled by default, and it does allow you to access all files without actually having to download them, which saves space and also reduces network traffic. When you use this in conjunction with the storage sense policies, you can actually further optimize your device's storage usage. So storage sense policies will save disk space if a user hasn't accessed the file in a certain period of time. That is, unless you mark the file as always available, which is denoted by that solid green check mark. So if you've noted, hey, this should always be available, it won't what we call dehydrate. But otherwise, it will clear off space if those files haven't been accessed. And that makes sure that you are only syncing changes for the files that you've worked with most recently. And then lastly, we have the, or not lastly, but we have the new offline mode, which is our new chapter sort of in syncing metadata between the service and the device. On the web, it allows you to navigate the web really quickly, as well as make changes to file metadata offline. Within File Explorer, you no longer need to remember file names or document locations or even specific names or words. The File Explorer search will understand your intent and will match to the right OneDrive document, image, etc. This has currently rolled out to all users who meet specific eligibility criteria, and we are doing our best to reduce that criteria so everyone can have it as soon as possible. And you will know if you have access based on that little icon on that right that's in that green square. So yeah, these policies are enabled by default, so don't turn them off. For Office integration.
I'm in a meeting.
For Office integration, we have this feature that we, if you don't take advantage of this feature, you won't get the modern Office suite of tools. So this enables collaboration, autosave, and presence, as you can see sort of on the right. We do think that this is super important to have on for the best experience. And so we've actually enabled this policy by default for many years. We announced last year that we were going to remove it, and we actually do plan to remove it completely in May. So when I said we had 10 policies, soon to be 9, this is the one that's getting the boot, just so you are aware. For folder shortcuts, we know that there's been a lot of discussion in this forum in the past. We will be sharing more about shortcuts and the latest investments in a future office hour, so I won't spend too much time on it here. But folder shortcuts are one of 2 ways to view the collaborative folders that you have on OneDrive. The other is syncing shared libraries directly to File Explorer. We do highly encourage you to use shortcuts because they're more performant, more accessible across devices. And we've actually now seen that it is the go-to choice for most of our users. If you do use synced team sites, you're syncing metadata changes for the entire site, which leads to more network traffic usage. And you're also not setting up your users for multi-device usage. So if you are still using sync, we do actually encourage you to at least start hiding the sync button with that command that's in the bottom left there. It'll remove the sync button, but existing syncs won't be impacted. So you'll just not create any new ones. All right. And so to recap, allow network traffic for WNS, ensure that the Files on Demand policy is enabled. Also encourage you to look at the Windows Storage Sense policies. Offline mode, these policies are on these ones here, do not enable them. Basically, this feature is on by default. Office integration, don't worry about it. It will be deprecated in the coming months. And then for folder shortcuts, we do encourage you to at least use folder shortcuts if you cannot hide the sync button. All right, last section, perhaps the beefiest section, despite there only being 2, is known folder move and the sync health reporting for backup and deployment. Known folder move, we also refer to it as KFM, automatically moves your desktop documents and pictures folders to OneDrive, enabling a really true local to cloud migration. It really meets users where they are, allows them to have access to these files across devices, collaborate on them. And it actually, when you think about looking forward, it'll help you ground your Copilot results. So if you don't have KFM on, then you do run the risk of files saving to local machines, which are not as well protected as the cloud-backed storage. And also you will not be as collaborative or as Copilot ready. Of all of the practices I've shared so far, this is the one you're going to want to plan the most carefully. So to enable it, you would want to start by enabling KFM silent opt-in and deploy in batches for your existing users. For new devices, you can just enable it since there shouldn't be any data that will be uploaded automatically. Based on our data, 99% of users use silent KFM. And I'll talk a little bit actually about how we rolled this out within Microsoft on the next slide. You'll also want to enable the KFM opt-in with Wizard in case there are failures. So then we actually do prompt users to go enable it themselves. And there will be more insights into what needs to be resolved on their end if it wasn't able to complete silently. And then if you turn on KFM blocked opt-out, it'll prevent your end users from stopping backup. The last thing we do want to call out is you can choose which files to ignore by enabling the Enable OD Ignore list from GPO. In the future, and quite soon actually, we are going to bring you the ability to exclude folders as well. All right, so within Microsoft, we implemented KFM through a pretty comprehensive strategy that included user awareness, batching, geo, and then policy configuration. So in addition to all the end user benefits of KFM, a big goal for us was to ensure that all users' data was in the cloud from a security perspective. We sent weekly emails and reminders to targeted users. We offered an option to get an exemption with business justification that would be reviewed by security and IT. And we also promoted KFM through Viva Engage and our tech web blogs. We did this in batches of about 5,000 users per week, and we split into 2 deployments per week. We also did special batches for execs and vendors because they required a slightly different approach. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we used both the Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager and Intune because we have a mix of devices and how they're managed across Microsoft. In terms of KFM best practices, there are 3 things that we wanted to call out. So KFM as a local to cloud migration strategy means planning for network usage and merging files appropriately. So really, again, as I mentioned before, rolling out in batches is pretty critical. We also have a lot of questions from users who have used Windows redirection policies in the past. We have a pretty comprehensive guide that breaks down to different use cases and the steps you'll need to take. So we do recommend that you go look at that. Usually you're going to want to migrate the network share using the migration tool, disable Windows redirection, leave the content behind, and then roll out KFM. And like the key here is to avoid bringing data back to the machine from the file share, because then you would get duplicate data if you didn't do that. Lastly, for macOS, we really encourage you to use the standalone version and have full disk access enabled. We do have steps to provide full disk access in that link in the bottom right as well. We do have the Sync OneDrive health reports. I don't know if folks have seen these. These are somewhat new, not totally new. It's in the Microsoft 365 Apps Admin Center. And so you can get an idea of what is happening with OneDrive Sync across your company. You can look at the devices that are syncing, some that have errors. You can see what those errors are. You can also look at the progress for KFM deployment as you are rolling it out to your organization. You can see if devices are stuck on old builds. So it's a very good way to just monitor the health of the deployment in your organization. We are bringing this report to GCC customers in the coming months, and then GCC High and DoD are scheduled for next year. We do get a lot of feedback about wanting to be able to export the data in the Sync admin reports. Right now, it is available through Microsoft Graph Data Connect. You can then join that to other data sets that you might have, like AAD, Exchange, Teams. And if you look at the link at the bottom, there's a step-by-step guide on how to set that up, as well as the costs for exporting that data. All right, so to recap, for known folder move, we do encourage you to enable KFM silent opt-in and deploy in batches, enable the opt-in wizard, as well as blocking opt-out, and then think about the files that you would want to ignore. And then for Sync health reporting, you will have to enable a GPO on the devices so that data does get reported up into the admin center. So here, again, to recap, 10 policies, soon to be 9. Very important to go through, make sure that you have things enabled and working as we do recommend. Lastly, going to cover some troubleshooting pointers. So the 2 most common policies that we see to fail apply correctly are account configuration and known folder move. And this is typically because the policies only run once per device. So if you want to retry them, you actually need to remove or reset the registry keys before attempting to apply the policy again. If you want to just take a look at the table, a screenshot, different registry keys for Mac versus Windows. Mac, it's stored as a plist entry. So take a look at those. We can also drop them in the chat if that's easier, so you don't have to type them all in. If you do try again and things fail again, another thing we see is silent KFMing failing due to the Windows cheat PO. So I mentioned it earlier. I won't read this whole slide. There's sort of 3 different scenarios that we've outlined in our docs. So go take a look. Make sure you follow those instructions. Once you try to resolve that, you can then try again by resetting the reg keys on the prior slide. And then another issue we do see is silent KFM failing due to conflicts. So again, conflicts typically occur when a file has been moved into OneDrive, has the same file name as something that's already been moved. So typically when you've migrated data twice, such as from a network share to the cloud and then enabling KFM. If you want to just proceed and override the number of conflicts that are allowed, I believe by default, it's set to 100. If you said, hey, I'm fine with 2000, whatever that number is, you can go in, change this reg key, and then go try KFM again. So I think that covers the top issues that we typically see users run into with deploying and retrying some of these policies. And that is actually all I have for today. So yeah, if we want to open up to some questions.
Yeah, thanks for walking through all this, Kayla. If folks want to start raising their hands or dropping questions in the chat, we'll probably start with maybe 5 to 10 minutes specifically on Kayla's topic, and then we'll open up to kind of broader questions if you have them. And we've got first hand up in Ove, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, that's correctly. My name is Ove Bristrand from Stockholm, Sweden. We are trying to merge customers from syncing to add shortcut to OneDrive. And when we do this, it's quite of a manual process of doing it in moving this, because first we have to stop syncing and delete the data from the devices, and then go over to add shortcut to OneDrive, because you need to do it in that way. You cannot add shortcut to OneDrive to something that you're already syncing. This is quite a manual process. Have you established any best practices for this process, or can it even be automated?
I think I saw Carter on the call. I don't know, Gaia, if you wanted to take it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we don't have, so first we've been rolling out some changes that better handle the conflicts between the sync button and add to OneDrive. That's more targeted for end users who might get into that state where they have a shortcut and they click the sync button or vice versa. Those are rolling out. In terms of tooling, though, to help make the transition easier, that's something that's top of mind for us to figure out a plan for, because we hear the need for that. I know we're planning a session specifically on add to OneDrive, I believe is it in June?
I believe we're tentatively scheduled for June. Yes.
Yeah, so we'll have more to share, but we don't currently have a way to automate that. But I hear the feedback.
Okay, but you still see this as a manual process. It's quite time consuming and will be costly for the customers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know, Carter, if you want to talk to any of the improvements around the conflicts between the two that maybe make it easier for end users.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from an end user perspective, we have one change coming out where if they have started to sync that new folder shortcut, then they'll get a conflict within their activity center, and they'll have a one-click button that will stop the syncing of the team site and allow the folder shortcut to go forward. So it is still once per team site, essentially. There still is a user action once per team site, but there is a new conflict experience that's coming out that allows them to do it seamlessly and just, but it still requires that user consent or that user interaction. But okay, it's good feedback. It's good feedback on the automation front and seeing a better way to move, and we're listening there.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, next up, I believe, is Dean.
Hey, thanks for taking my question. I've got a question around the interface for files on demand, the current one, especially for SharePoint. there's a couple of buttons there, free up disk space and download all files. I ran into an issue, it's still ongoing, where I'm getting a mixture of where I've gone through the directories manually and chosen to keep on my machine, where some are showing as they are and some aren't. And that was confirmed by support, who recreated it at their end. So logically, we both went and looked at actually just setting the whole account to files on demand and download all files. Problem is, you click download all files, there's no information whether you are in the download all files mode or free up disk space mode. I'll put a little screenshot in the chat. I'll put it in again. It might have scrolled up the screen a bit there. Do you see the two buttons there where it says free up disk space?
Yeah, I see the screenshot. Is the feedback that there isn't any visual cue on which mode you're in?
Correct.
Got it. Yeah, I remember we debated the approach to take for that button a bunch. It's not quite because if you click it, we're still downloading the files, and then users can change subfolders. So we had decided to go with the button approach versus like showing it as a mode. But I understand how that can be confusing. That's good feedback.
I think way back it was radio buttons, and it was a lot clearer. I think the wording around that. Yeah, with the current behavior. But it's good feedback. No worries.
All right, I think I'm going to throw to a question in the chat first. Nick Hurdley asked if there were any plans to have OneDrive use some sort of LAN kind of peer-to-peer sharing with other local devices to reduce traffic and increase hydration speed, especially on sites with lower connections.
Yeah, I can take this one. It's something we've looked at a while ago. When we actually looked at the data, there wasn't... we didn't see as much of a benefit as we might have expected, so we decided not to invest in it at the time. So it's not something we're actively looking at, but we have looked at it in the past to evaluate whether it was something we wanted to do.
Perfect. Next up, I believe, is David.
Hi, how y'all doing? So we're kind of in the exploratory stages of OneDrive. And one of the things that we've come across is we've got a thing in our environment. So our users' documents folders are redirected to a file share. And then they also have a mapped drive to that same file share. And a few of our applications are set to look specifically for that M drive when they run. Is there a way that you can map a drive to the OneDrive folder, to their OneDrive files if they're moved off the file server to OneDrive? I've been poking around with Google for weeks trying to figure out if that's even possible.
Sorry, can you share again you said you're mapped to an external drive. Can you summarize again the scenario?
Sure, yeah. So all of our users' documents folder, they're redirected to a file share. Mm-hmm. And as part of their profile, when they log in, they get a mapped drive that points to that very same location on the file server. And we have some applications that are looking specifically for that mapped drive when they run, because it's pulling information that's stored in their documents folder, basically. Mm-hmm. So when we try to move their files from the file share to OneDrive, is there a way to get that mapped drive to point to the OneDrive files?
Got it. Okay. Basically, you're saying, if I understood correctly, you would want like the OneDrive folder to map to that like letter drive that the application is pointing to.
Right. Is there a way to map the drive to the OneDrive files?
Yeah, there isn't a supported way to do that. It's something we've heard in the past. We haven't invested there so far, but it's helpful to hear. I think there's some, like someone mentioned in the chat, a symlink or a hard link There's also some other commands I've seen on Windows that might help. I'll have to double check the documentation and I'll paste it in the chat. But there isn't anything we've like published in terms of how to do that. But others might have some ideas of how they've achieved that.
Great, thank you.
It's technically possible, but it's not supported. So the issue there is that Windows and OneDrive work based on the path where OneDrive files are synced.
Mm-hmm.
We register sync routes in the registry, and when you map a drive like this to a specific OneDrive location, you're bypassing some of that logic. So it's unpredictable.
Right, yeah.
It's not designed to work that way.
Yeah. But it's helpful to hear. Thanks, Walter. And it's helpful to hear the scenario as part of us considering whether we want to support that officially in the future.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm going to pull another question from the chat. Scott Beardsley asked, for the sync health report, does enabling the enable sync admins report GPO have any performance impact on the client computer?
Yeah, I think I answered that one in the chat. We don't expect any impact on the machine. So we just encourage to roll it out in batches just to make sure everything's working correctly. But yeah, no expected impact on the machine.
Perfect. All right, Jennifer, you've got the next hand.
Awesome, thanks. So first comment, we also have that use case that gentleman mentioned that we will be dealing with. So it's not isolated what he was saying he needed a solution for. The other thing, like I said in the chat, tomorrow I'm turning off the sync button. So I've done a whole bunch of documentation and whatnot and testing on my own. So two things. One, question, when people are unsyncing that old city of South, or not city of Saskatoon, you don't have city of Saskatoon, their old SharePoint location, does doing the free up disk space actually help with, because the big transition piece is obviously it needs to do all that syncing activity to switch. So does freeing up disk space ahead of time do anything to prep their system to assist with the speed of changing that sync method?
Let me make sure I understand the question. You're saying kind of freeing up disk space in terms of turning all the files in a location synced with the sync button.
Yes.
You free up space there. And then what was the part about, you said you're disabling
the sync
button.
Yeah, so this is okay. So this, how about I go through what I'm telling people and what we're suggesting?
Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting to people is, and I've learned a few things, and I'm happy to share them right now because they're really good things to know. What we're saying is, you go in, you go to that sync location, you right click, you view online. So that opens up the SharePoint site where they're going to need to add the shortcut. So they do that. Then they need to unsync because that SharePoint sync keeps all the local copies as well. Maybe the cleaning up, the free up disk space doesn't do anything. I'm not sure, because the idea is what they have to do after they view online is unsync. When they unsync, that has to do an activity in the OneDrive sync, correct? And so that has to happen and finish up, and then they can add the shortcut. And so that also uses the OneDrive sync. So I'm trying to figure out the way to make it the least amount of time for the user.
Yeah, got it. Okay, yeah, that's a great question, and probably good for us to add to our recommendations and documentation. Yeah, I would say based on how the sync client works, it does make sense to free up space on the sync button location first, so that cleaning it up is faster and there's nothing left behind.
Yeah, and just a few helpful comments, just in case people don't know, because I've learned this now. So if you're in the SharePoint sync option and you're on your file explorer, you right click view online, it takes you to the SharePoint site. Note for your users, when it's a shortcut, the view online takes you to OneDrive and you do not know where those files are coming from except for the site. So there's a rename option. I'm not recommending people use it because then you're going to lose where that file was. I've also been telling people to do one of two things: either move all the files in your OneDrive into a folder that's just yours and color code the files, the folders that are just yours, because the syncing now, the shortcuts are going to throw people off. I've also been testing out the grouping of things. It's like, oh, these are all related to this thing. You can move them into subfolders. There's, I would recommend, if people are rolling this out, to do some experimentation on their own. I also had to remove all of my existing shortcuts to OneDrive because they all had different names, because I don't think I'm wrong that you guys have been playing around with the naming convention over the last year. So everything was a hot mess. And so I removed all the shortcuts and re-added them so that I could provide documentation for our users to show them, okay, this is what it looks like now. And so I guess before stepping away, I'm going to ask, have you settled on that? Is that where we're landing now? Because this is what I found out. It's the site name and the folder. And if you're linking to the folder with the same name in a different library, it adds a 1 or a 2 or a 3, which hopefully nobody ever has, but it seems to be pretty consistent.
So first, thank you for sharing the way you've approached this and kind of the best practices you've learned. I think it's really useful for a bunch of folks, as noted in the chat, and we'll make sure to write all of these down as well. A few things. One, yes, we recently updated the naming convention. I know Hans just pasted a screenshot that shows from the MC post that shows the convention. So that's the convention we expect. Now, of course, we reserve to change anything in the future, but there's no changes planned. And the feedback there was that the first shortcut you've, for example, if you just synced, if you click shortcut on documents, it wouldn't have the location until the second documents folder. Now it always has the location. I think there was another part of your question, but now I'm forgetting. Anyways, thank you for sharing all the best practices. And I think, Carter, you came off mute, so go ahead if you want to add anything.
Yeah, there was another part of your question where you said that when you clicked View Online in File Explorer, that it doesn't take you to the site anymore. And
because it's a shortcut.
Yes, and so it takes you to OneDrive, and you can be able to see your contents, but you don't see the site.
See in the sharing, you can see the site, but you can't see the folder that it's in, or the library. Because in my experience, I'm not seeing you don't have the full path, right? So if somebody has a lot of nested folders.
Yeah, so there is an action over on the right side. It's either in the details pane or it's on the right side where it's like go to site. And it will take, and that's available for all folder shortcuts. Once you open up into a folder shortcut, it can take you into that site if it's a SharePoint site. If it's shared from someone else's OneDrive, you're not going to be able to go into their OneDrive. But there is a go to site or the ability to see that path. And so you can click on that and it'll take you over into the SharePoint site.
Mine says open original location. That's what mine's called. I just noticed it. Is that the term you guys expect, or is that an older term?
That could be. I'm not exactly sure the final string, but I remember that option being there. And so if you click through on that and it takes you to that original SharePoint site, that would be the action that I'm pointing you at.
Awesome. No, that's great. I was doing so much documentation. I totally missed that. So I really appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, I've got one more sync question, then we'll open it up to broader, not just sync questions. Guy, I think this one's for you from John. The OneDrive documentation says that the sync limit for optimum performance is 300,000 files. It's been previously mentioned that these limits would be changing. Any updates on that? Is 300K still the limit?
It is still the official limit. That's why we haven't changed it. We have been rolling out some improvements gradually. So for example, based on our data, we've seen a 2x improvement in initial sync scenarios with some of the changes we made recently. But we still have a backlog of items we want to get through before we officially update the documentation. And so, still very top of mind, but we'll share an update, and we'll make sure to have a one of these office hour sessions when we're actually changing the limit, and we'll go into more details about the changes and what they mean.
Perfect. Thanks, Guy. All right. Our first non-sync related question is for Kalpana. Are there any updates on when the face detection and search will come to personal OneDrive?
Hi. Sorry, unmuting. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Yes, we have actually started the process of rolling out slowly to the consumers already, and we'll be continuing that over the next 6 months. So we expect that basically by the end of the year, most consumers should have the Face AI and search capabilities.
Awesome. All right, Jennifer, you still have a hand up. Is that a legacy hand or a new question?
Legacy, it didn't put it down.
All right, other questions for folks? Any topic? Yeah, Kevin.
Hi, this is very fresh on my mind. I want your reaction to an end user experience, which caused a lot of turmoil for me, actually. On Monday, end user received, hey, your OneDrive needs an update. He went through, did the update, meaning he started doing the update, and then it came up and says, oh, you need to uninstall your existing OneDrive. He did that. When he went through all of that, and then pops up a window that says, oh, do you want to delete all these files? This is all automated. I didn't do anything. This is all from Microsoft's. And he said, sure, boom. He thought he was deleting files from his PC. No, it was deleting corporate files in SharePoint libraries across the globe. 56,000 of them slowly were being deleted for 2 days out of 7 terabytes, okay, of files connected. Okay, how do you restore those files? The only way, and I talked to a Microsoft SharePoint expert, technician, is the recycle bin, right? The recycle bin, if anybody has restored anything from the SharePoint recycle bin, well, that's not user-friendly at all. That is a pain in the butt. And you can't sort it, you can't do anything. And you can't overwhelm it. So I only had to select 1,000 at a time, 56 times, okay? So because it takes time, and if you do anything more, like over 5,000, it will, it just hangs, right? So two things here. How, now you could probably say, well, that was a dumb end user, but this guy seems a little technical knowledgeable, but he clicked that button. Popped up, says, do you want to delete these documents? And he said, sure. One is that. And then the other thing, I mean, SharePoint has been improved immensely over the years, except for the recycle bin and trying to restore things. I had that 10 years ago. Same thing. Somebody deleted all the financial files from a SharePoint library, right? And it took hours to do that restore from that point, right? Nothing is there, one is, I just wanted to relay that experience to you. I'm trying to train that company. Now it's we're a partner in one of our companies, and going to do some heavy training there. And we are converting people to, doing shortcuts and getting rid of all the direct syncs and everything like that. But that was troubling. When he gets an update, he goes through the update, and it comes up and asks for, do you want to do that? Oh my gosh. Any response to any of my consternation there? I'll just let it go. Sorry.
Yeah, first, thanks for sharing, and sorry to hear that you experienced that. A few things. One, I hear the feedback about the recycle bin. I know that's an area due for improvements, so we'll discuss that within the team. In terms of the deletion issue, though, I'd love to investigate and understand what happened, because that doesn't sound expected at all. First, some of the behavior you mentioned, and also we do have protections for deleting a lot of content or deleting content in shared folders. And so I just want to understand what happened in this case. So if you want to reach out to me, it would be good for us to dig in and figure out what happened.
Yeah, well, the end user didn't take any screenshots or anything, and he just went through it. So he just described to me what I just shared with you. So there was nothing, but it was an update. I saw it in there. The OneDrive was updated on Monday, and ever since then,
if it was recent, we should be able to figure out what happened from the logs, and we might need some additional information from the machine. Okay. If you wanted us to investigate. And then, Trent, I see your call out about M365 backup. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Thanks, Gaia. Yeah, I was just shamelessly plugging M365 backup, which can be used to, if you enable backup and start backing up OneDrive accounts, then restoring any sort of event like a ransomware or accidental deletion is super easy and can be done at scale within minutes rather than having to write a script yourself. So
right. But we do have a third-party backup, which worked for some of the things we have to do. And like you wanted to drill down to a specific file to restore, and we can get that done. And that was great. But this was just like a random, shotgun of files that are being deleted. We didn't know the random thing. Hey, they would just pop into I would see them every few minutes, they would pop into the recycle bin, from this guy's account saying he's deleting it, and it was just slowly being deleted until I went into his system and stopped OneDrive. Had to stop OneDrive, uninstall OneDrive, did everything to stop that crazy thing. It would have went on and deleted everything. But
one remark from my side: the thing is, I never have had information that my OneDrive client will be updated. Never.
Oh,
right, yeah.
I don't know how this guy got it.
Yeah, it's not something we ever show. So that's why I was curious to understand what actually happened from the logs.
Okay. I'll see if we can get that. We got a couple minutes left. So let somebody else ask a question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
See everybody in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All right, I think we've got time for at least one more. Craig, I think you're up next.
Yeah, just a quick question or a comment regarding the new naming convention for the folders coming into OneDrive. The SPO site name. I'm looking at the screen that Hans put in there. The SPO site name and the folder name. We have problems with the site names because we're using those site names that are coming in from a D365 site collection, and so that's causing then long names in those names, which coming then from the project site, and then that also then of course then causes long file names. I'm just wondering, is there any way that we can control other than renaming all of our site? I see your head shaking hands. There's no way to reduce the name of that by, I don't know, policy, however, whatever?
We don't currently have a way to customize that naming convention. We know that it might not work for 100% of scenarios, but based on all our research and discussions with folks, that's the one we thought would work best. I think the recommendation would be to change the site name if possible. We are planning some improvements to how the client handles max path in certain scenarios. I don't think it will necessarily help in this one, but that's something we'll take back to the team. But in the meantime, I would look at if it's possible to rename either the shortcuts or the site to make it easier.
Okay. Great. All right, so we're just about to close. I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to plug next month's office hours. You can register now at the AKA link you see on the screen, officehours/May. So if you're not at the M365 conference at the beginning of May, don't worry. We'll do a recap of the conference for all of you in office hours. We've got some new features that are coming that we're really excited about. And you should be able to register for that now. So you've got it on your calendar, and we hope to see you all there. And then I think, yep, Rob just dropped a bunch of links into the chat as well. Make sure to take a look if you need the conference guide, office hours links, past sessions. And the recording for this will be available on the Microsoft Community Learning channel on YouTube. So thank you, Kayla, for walking through all of the awesome sync deployment stuff. And thank you all for joining.